Not quite there yet. It is now 7 o'clock. I hereby call the Riverside Board of Zoning Appeals to order. And with roll call, please.
Mr. Childers.
Here.
Mr. Poltz.
Here.
Mr. Richardson.
Here.
Mr. Schneider.
Here.
Mr. Timbrook.
Here. Everyone had a chance to look over and review the minutes of the 24th, August 24th hearing.
Yes.
Anybody have any questions, changes, problems?
No.
I have make a motion. We approve the minutes as written.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Childers.
Yes.
Mr. Timbrook.
Yes.
Mr. Poltz.
Yes.
Mr. Richardson.
Yes.
Mr. Schneider.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so our first case is case 21-0024, deals with 5867 Williston Drive. With an appeal of administration decision to deny reinstallation of the second curb cut. So do you want to tell us what's going on?
I, Nia Holt, affirm that the testimony I'm about to give before the Board of Zoning Appeals is the correct to the best of my knowledge. This is BZA case 21-0024. A request to appeal the administrative decision to deny the reinstallation of a curb cut on a second driveway. This is a little background about the case. The applicant received a notice from our code enforcement officer of violation on August 2nd for an unpermitted carport and driveway,
August 2nd, what year?
2021.
Okay,
Yes.
so I know we got some history in here. All right,
Yes,
okay.
there's quite a bit of history. The driveway in question for this appeal is the second driveway, and it does not have an existing apron to connect it to the public street. Prior to submitting a right-of-way permit, they talked to the service department staff, seeing if the reinstallation was possible. During that discussion, they talked to us about a previous Riverside staff member who required them to remove that apron and install the curb cut that we see today. The Public Service Department Director denied the reinstallation. They were sent that letter on August 17th of this year, and given the reasons why under UDO section 1113.13A. And as you know, you, as the Board of Zoning Appeals, have the authority to hear appeals of administrative decisions. Here is the zoning of that parcel. It is outlined in blue and is in the R3 medium density residential district. This is an aerial map. Again, it is outlined in blue and you can see the first driveway, but this is the driveway we're discussing today. This is the front of the subject site. And you can see both of them. We'll get a little closer, you can see the curb cuts. This is the first driveway. Clearly there's an apron there. This is the second one. That curb is in place. There's another view of that. Here is a view of that driveway in 2015. Here is it, same driveway in 2007, and this is the staff's analysis. When considering non-conforming rights cases, it's up to the applicant or property owner to first establish that that structure existed, and then they have to establish that it continued to exist without being altered or destroyed. Section 1103.13 states that should such a non-conforming structure or a portion of a structure be destroyed by any means, it shall not be reconstructed. So we find that the intent of the UDO or the Unified Development Ordinance is clear. In section 1103.13, which the service department cited. This.
Thank you. A little bit further.
Yes.
Yeah.
There we go. It states that it is the intent of this ordinance that such nonconformities be allowed to continue until they are removed. They should not be encouraged to survive. It goes on in our UDO to say that the city has the authority to regulate driveway access to public streets to lessen the impact of future development on the city's stairwells or the systems that we have here, and to minimize the number of driveway and access points onto the public streets. That is within the city's authority. So staff finds that there is evidence, abundant evidence, that there are two driveways and that they did exist prior to the current regulations. However, there is not sufficient evidence that they continue to exist without being altered. Contrary to the evidence that we have, the applicant has removed that apron and placed a curb cut there. And so we do not believe that it should be reconstructed and that the service department was correct in their decision. Your required actions are based on the regulations in the UDO, the case file, their staff report, and any testimony and evidence that you hear today. You must determine whether the applicant has met the burden of proof to sustain their appeal. Are there any questions for staff?
On the one picture that you showed, Naya, did you say that last picture was 2017?
2007, sorry.
Could you just go back to those pictures and
Mhm.
clarify the years?
So this is 2007,
Okay,
2015,
okay.
and this is 2021.
All right, thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Questions? Okay. All right, then at 7:06, we will open the public portion of our hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the application? What you have to do is come up here. There's a paper to sign in and swear in. There should be. Is it up there?
Just a swear in.
Sworn statement. I, so-and-so.
I, Dan Combs, affirm that the testimony I'm about to give before the Board of Zoning Appeals is correct to the best of my knowledge.
What's your name?
Dan Combs,
What's your relationship to the property?
I am a neighbor. I have lived probably longer on the street than the one that's still there.
Dan Combs, C-O-M-B-S?
Yes, yes. I live at 300 Williston Drive. I also own 5927 and I've owned 5938. And my brother has owned several properties on the street also.
Okay.
The house in question, when I was a child, our house burnt in 1968, January of 68. My aunt and uncle bought the home at 313 across the street from the home I own right now. We lived with them. My other aunt and uncle lived one door away on the corner of Williston Drive and Kane Court. As a child, my very first friend was this neighbor, the home that they're living in, the house next door, that is complaining about the original driveway. That house was my friend's as a child. The two driveways were there when I was 7 years old. I'll be 60 in November. The home was built with two driveways. It was originally meant to have two driveways. It was the model home for our neighborhood. That has never changed in all of these years.
Excuse me, Mr. Combs, can you pull the mic to your mouth?
That has never changed in all these years. So I'm confused as a resident and a taxpayer. Why is this driveway in question? They need the two driveways. They have two sons that drive. They have cars. The house has had two driveways its whole history, since the day it was built. I rode my bike on both driveways, and Mr. and Mrs. Lux was very kind elderly people. They didn't like kids in their yard. They didn't like kids on their driveways, but they allowed that neighbor next door, their son and daughter, and my brother and I to use their driveways and to play with the kids next door. I am concerned that this neighbor next door takes it upon themselves to question everything about our neighborhood. There's also a question of this neighbor that they went to another neighbor and asked about having an addition, and you've refused them to put an addition on their home because of basement windows. This neighbor took this lady into her home, showed her her addition and the basement windows, and we're all confused. Why are these people moving from Inglewood to our neighborhood and not happy. John and Christine live at the opposite end of the street than I do. John and Christine do a lot for our neighbors. I've seen them at many neighbors' homes helping. What is the problem with this family? I'm very concerned.
Now, you seem more concerned about this people next door.
I'm concerned,
complaining.
I'm concerned of their issue with the two driveways.
Well, the thing is, you're entering testimony that we didn't even know about, that I didn't know about.
Well, their issue with the two driveways concern me.
But I understand that, but I'm just saying, we never even heard of these people.
Well,
We just heard from the city that they didn't want it.
one of your people called me and I gave testimony to the person of why, how I felt about the issue.
Okay.
So, the two driveways, the driveways in question, first of all, the one you had, whatever the people that you had put the curb in, that's the original driveway that every single house in our neighborhood has. That is the driveway. The one on the left side was put in by the home builder that built our neighborhood. That is not the original driveway. If it was me as the homeowner, I'd want the original driveway to my house.
Right.
The other driveway is a distance away from that driveway on the opposite side of the home. I don't understand what that have anything to do with this neighbor here that bought this house. I'm really confused about it
I don't know.
and
either.
concerned.
Because they didn't present a letter to us. They may be here to talk. I don't know.
So, when the issue was brought before me, I said, I have problem with several of my neighbors around 300. I have one home that has 14 automobiles. 12 of them are normally in the yard. I don't complain to any of you. My other neighbor takes my property. I have 2 lots, so I don't complain because I have more grass than I can mow. So they put their new privacy fence up on my side. I don't complain about it. But this person wants to complain about 2 driveways. I feel it's wrong that the council does not allow Christine and John to have the 2 driveways. They were original to the house. Why is there a problem? And if I've had 2 strokes and I can remember as a child the 2 driveways, I'm sure there's other people that's moved away from the neighborhood that is my age. I'll be 60 in November that can remember the 2 driveways.
Okay, I appreciate it, sir.
And I beg the council to reconsider.
And we're not
And-
council, you know that, right?
Yes,
Okay.
and think of all of us as good citizens and neighbors and wanting to help each other instead of complaining and being angry.
That was good.
Okay, so I come before you to ask for you to reconsider, please,
Appreciate it.
because these people are good people and they need their driveways. And that's not right.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're very welcome. Does anybody have any questions for him? No? Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of the application? In favor of, right? Okay.
Not in favor, I'm
Yeah, you're in favor then? Okay. You got to swear in there.
Yeah, I, Robert Pickle, affirm that the testimony I'm about to give before the Board of Zoning Appeals is correct to the best of my knowledge. Born and raised on that street, exactly across the house, 58 Wilson Drive. I live on Travis currently. I work for the Riverside School System in the maintenance department. I'm 61 years old. Again, as Danny said, that was a Rose home. That was the show home for the neighborhood. Two driveways, tons of people in and out, before that time that I had heard from my parents, okay? Always had 2 driveways. If I'm not mistaken, at one point, John wanted to put a garage in the backyard on the left side driveway. He was denied that. It was told that he had to have the garage behind the right side driveway. And I believe that is why that he did the curb as far as that goes, that the apron was taken away because he couldn't put the garage where he really needed to access the bigger side of the house, which would make sense to me as a homeowner. Again, I'm speaking to their character. I've known them almost the entire time that they've lived there. My parents were still living there when they moved in. And I knew the previous person. Besides that, I knew the Lexes as a kid. I'm just, I don't know. So who was it that actually denied them putting an apron back in? not the council, right? This is the city of Riverside.
Yes. It was the,
Who in particular, as far as that came out to actually inspect it? Did it say? I mean, I know most of the guys because I work pretty close with all those guys over there. I'm not saying that I'm going to change somebody's mind. I'm just curious why that was changed. I mean, I've dealt with stuff in the city of Riverside where I live on Travis, all my life. Okay. When the curbs, I mean, when the new sidewalks got put in so many years ago, I was one of the first ones that got done. Sure, I got 3 pieces I'm going to have done. I took care of it the next year. Now we got somebody different. Oh yeah, these were 2 college kids we hired. That's not right. So it's not been the same across the board. Okay, it's not been. I just feel that they're being treated unfairly as far as that goes. If the 2 driveways are there all that time, I believe that the reason that apron was taken away was because they couldn't use that. Now they do want to. Those driveways were blacktop. They were never concrete. Okay. That's why they're gravel now. Concrete's pretty expensive. All right. Guy works hard all his life. To concrete 2 driveways is not very cheap, but he still wants to use that. I mean, I know, I deal with the school system. We got to pour concrete for that. It's not cheap. I guess I'm here to speak on his character, and I just want to know why this can't be worked out some way, with the city for him. I appreciate your time.
yeah, my understanding is that he had it and he was forced by, I don't know how many years ago, by some zoning inspector to tear out that he couldn't have it. And then when he tore it out, and then they changed the rules, now it makes it difficult to go back and do it over.
Correct. When
because
I'm
of-
saying that, and that's what I'm understanding as I kind of listened into this previous thing, I'm thinking, why is this not grandfathered in as far as, I know, I mean, when I put stuff in, now you can't do that. You got to get a permit. If it was already there and you're putting something back up, it's grandfathered in. I mean, I understand some of that, but if you're told you can't put a garage up, all right, and then the city comes and says, you know what, you're not going to be able, we're just going to take that up. Now things have changed. Can they not go back to that? I mean, I know they couldn't find a picture from 1960. I guarantee you if it was a city and they wanted something taken care of, they'd find a picture somewhere. They've been aerial photos of plats for years. I just feel it's kind of ticky tacky to me.
Yeah.
All right. You're wanting taxpayers and to stay here and this and that. This is some of the stuff that I've dealt with. I see the stuff in the neighborhoods. I take care of my house. It's one of the cleanest in the area. I can't speak for other people, you know what I mean? But I'd be one of the first ones that they'd come and say something to if something wasn't right. And I got other people that are, it's just not the same all the way around across the board. All right.
Anybody have any questions?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of? Okay.
I, David Herzog, affirm the testimony I'm about to give before the Board of Zoning Appeals is correct to the best of my knowledge.
How you spell your last name?
Herzog.
And your relationship is your neighbor?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm kind of here. I can't say that I'm against the driveway or for it. What I'm for is, I know when I moved into my house, there was a driveway there that was being used as a driveway
You mean at his
Okay.
place? At his place?
at his place.
Okay.
The driveway that's in question. And there was a tree there that protruded into that driveway that was on my property. And that fall, after I moved in, one of the first things I did was trim that tree up so John could get his van into that driveway. I have no problem with that driveway as polluted that I have. Okay, I have no problem with it. Okay, as long as it's done according to what zoning is for it. And I have, whatever the zoning is for a property line to the edge of the driveway, I have no problem with it because it doesn't make sense to me that the actual driveway that they have on the left side of their house is their driveway because the access to their house is clear across from the house. Okay, I have no problem with that second driveway for multiple reasons in my view that There's a lot of cars parked on the street in that area. I park a car on that street on a regular basis. So that second driveway gets cars off the street, which makes it safer to communicate, to drive through there. People drive through too fast anyway. And I'm the guy from Englewood, so somehow I'm the bad guy here, but I've never complained about the driveway to anybody. Okay, the only thing I did was appeal for zoning to get a shed, to put up a shed in my backyard. And I had to have it 5 feet from my fence. I thought that was a little much, but that's what the city told me, so that's what I did. It's actually 5.5 feet. So, that's probably what started all this. But the driveway itself, if it's put in right and maintained right, and the city doesn't have a problem with it, I don't have a problem with it. I don't want to be the neighbor that caused that driveway to be taken out. That's not my goal here,
So you didn't complain about the driveway?
not the driveway.
Okay.
Okay, I have problems with encroachment on my property, of being too close, which when they were putting the gravel in, I said something and they moved it back. Okay, and gave me 18 inches there instead of being right on it. So, that was good. If I have a problem, it has nothing to do with the driveway.
Okay.
Okay,
Sounds good.
so that's what I got to say.
I appreciate it.
But I got a question for you, sir, if you don't mind.
Mr. Herzog, got a question?
Quick question for you. So you didn't complain about the driveway?
No, not the
Okay.
driveway.
Did you complain about the carport? Is that where the
I
complaint
have a
came from?
problem with the way the carport is, and they're using my fence as a wall with a tarp hanging down there.
Gotcha.
I mean, the carport's right on top of my fence. And I've left up a section of my fence. Okay, I took down a privacy fence, came to the front of the house. I spent a lot of money on that house to make it look nicer. Okay, more curb appealing. And I took the fence that came out to the front of the house, I'm pulling it back to the back of the house. Okay, because aesthetically it looks nicer to me. I don't like fences to the front of the house. That's just me. I'm not saying other people, if it's within the city zoning, shouldn't have that. It's just me. I didn't want it out there. I wanted it at the back corner of my house. So there's a section of my fence that's still up there next to where that carport is they have, that is still acting as that wall, because I haven't taken it down yet, because I got approval to finish up putting a fence at the back of my house within a year of when I applied for the permit for my shed. Okay.
Got it.
So that's all going to be done next spring, because I only have so much money too, like everybody else in the world. And so I haven't taken that fence down because I didn't want to just rip that down with their stuff there.
Sure. Sounds like
So-
you're being considerate. So your concern is you would want the carport to fall within the correct setback, but since driveways in the city
Well,
don't have a
some
side yard
kind of
setback, you're okay with the
setback.
driveway, right?
I'm not even saying, I don't know what the correct setback is.
Okay.
Okay, so, but it should be set back something. Because if
Okay.
there's any maintenance got to be done to the fence, or, my fence shouldn't be a wall for their carport, is what I'm saying.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Do you, what's your address? Just the street number?
5879.
I'm looking at the drawing here just to make sure I understood which home was yours.
As you're looking at their home, it's the one to the right,
5879.
5879.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
anything else? Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else here like to speak in favor of the application? Can we hear from you guys? It's your property, right? Well, it'd be nice to hear from you.
That's the owner, actually.
Yeah,
Okay. I, Christine Manriquez, affirm that the testimony I'm about to give before the Board of Zoning Appeals is correct to the best of my knowledge.
now we'll just do one at a time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you can have a seat.
Can you pull the mic down? Thank you.
Hello. So it was my understanding that the main reason for coming here tonight was
Stay
talk
closer to the
about-
mic.
to talk about the issue with the curb and the apron that we were ordered to take out. about 5 years ago, I came here and talked to one of the secretaries and I asked, so what was the reason that we had to take it out in the first place? And she says, I really don't know. And Craig, the one that was working with us then, told us that we were only allowed to have one driveway if there were going to be a garage built, no matter if it was on the left or the right driveway. The opposite driveway apron would have to become removed and a curb would have to be in place. And we had a red note, this is almost 20 years ago, on our door. So that, of course, scared us. And, we first time home buyers. So, we felt somewhat intimidated and nervous. And, he had come out to our house more than once. And the last time he was upset that it hadn't been removed yet, or it was 3 times then. And it hadn't been removed yet. And so we weren't 100% sure we're going to put a garage in anyway. We just wanted to find out what the perimeter, what the rules were through zoning about doing it. And so he told us either way, we had to get that driveway out because if we were going to put the garage in, it was going to be the one that's left facing the front of the house. So I called the contractor, he came out and removed it. And not too long after that, a couple of weeks or so, Craig came and met the contractor to approve the curb, So, but what I'm saying, in about 5 years ago, I came and I asked the secretary, what was the reason? What was the, I don't really understand why. I'd never got any paperwork why. I've looked it up a few times, but I never found out why would we have to take one out to get the garage. And I was told that it was never in the record here that we were told to take it out. And that's why we're, I guess, feeling that it would be fair to put it back because we're wrongly told to take it out in the first place. That's just where we're at,
Okay. And in your letter, you, under oath, you're saying that, let me see here, I had it a second ago. You'd never heard of Board of Zoning Appeals
I've
during
never,
all those conversations?
well, back then I'm talking about,
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. That's funny. Okay,
right,
that's all I wanted to know.
yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody have any questions?
I did, quick question for you. Ma'am? No, you're okay. Just a quick question for you. And before I ask you this is not a trick question, okay? So it's going to sound that way when I first ask it, but I don't want you to think it's any type of trick. Since you removed that apron and you guys installed the curb, have you guys continued all this time to drive over that curb and use that as a driveway?
We did,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Do you have anything to further? Okay. Is there one here who would like to speak in opposition to the application?
We have a representative from the service department.
What?
We have a representative from the service department, the department who made the administrative decision. Do you have any questions for that department? They can,
I don't.
oh, okay.
Nope. Good. Everybody good? Okay, at 7:28, we'll call the public portion to an end. Okay. My take on this may be a little different than most. But having read their stuff, having what they've told us, the fact it's been there for 60 years, sworn testimony. The problem I have with all of it starts back when Craig Kinley, the zoning guy, told him to move it. And that's it. So that does not sit well with me. I'm not sure he had authority to do that. And he never told them they had a right to an appeal. They were denied due process. So the whole thing started to tumble right there. They being afraid of the city, and I'm not so sure sitting here for 25 years, if I wouldn't be afraid of the city if they came in and started shouting at me. So in fact, one did once. Let a tree go over somebody else's property. But anyway. So I'm not in favor of upholding this hearing, upholding the order to disallow this. I'm more in favor of overturning it. Anyone else have any thoughts?
I don't see how we could uphold the appeal, given this evidence.
The denial of due process? Steve?
The complete denial of
Yeah.
due process.
Do we have the dimensions of the driveway? Do we know how wide and long it is?
We what?
Do we have the dimensions of the driveway on any of these? Driveway and the apron is, we already ended the public portion. The driveway and the apron is one, right? So when we look at the UDO, it says that 50% of replacement costs would have to be removed to make it non-existent. They've testified that they've continued to use this. Neighbors have testified that it's been continued to be used. So I don't think at any point, even removing that curb, that 50% of it was removed. So I would also take issue to all the testimony that they were forced to take that out of there. And I don't think there's any reason not to believe that that took place. Obviously, it probably did. And the city has no records of this at all. So for them to come in here with such a vivid memory and so many people with such a vivid memory, we can only believe what they say here. If the city would have had records on that, maybe it would have told us something different, but they don't. And I would be completely in favor of upholding their appeal.
You else have anything else? Okay. Now I'll read our findings. A lot of words, people. We find that the property owner moved into the property which had two driveways. According to staff conclusions and testimony offered, there was sufficient evidence that the second curb cut existed prior to current regulations. Just based on the ordinances it states, we find that where a lawful structure exists at an effective date of adoption or amendment of this ordinance, that could not be built under the terms of this ordinance by reason of restrictions on the area, lot, coverage, height, etc. Such structure may be continued as long as it remains otherwise lawful, subject to the following provisions. And those provisions that no such conforming structure may be enlarged or altered in a way which increases its nonconformity. Number two, should such nonconforming structure or nonconforming portion of the cost of replacement at the time structure be destroyed or by any means to the extent of more than 50% of the cost of replacement at the time of destruction, it shall not be reconstructed except in conformity with the ordinance. Should such structure be moved for any reason by any distance, whatever, it shall therefore conform to regulations for a district in which it's located after it is been removed. The problem with the current case is that the property owner was denied due process when the Riverside zoning administrator, or whatever his title was, required the removal of the curb without giving the property owner notice of a right to be heard on appeal. In the staff conclusions, there's a statement, sufficient evidence of the second curb existed prior to the current regulations. If the property owner had been given a notice of a right of appeal, he would have done so. And since the current regulations were not in place, he might have won that appeal. But the property owner never had a chance to argue his case. The staff is placing its findings on the fact that the property owner removed the curb, thereby ended his right to keep the curb since it was destroyed and not replaced. In other words, grandfathering has been removed. I disagree. Why did the property owner remove the curb cut? Because he was ordered to by a government official. The property owner did not want to get into trouble with the city. It is not clear that the zoning official had the authority to require the removal of the curb cut. Even if he had the authority, it is a basic tenet of American jurisprudence that in such situations, there should be an opportunity to appeal the governmental order. Therefore, I move that the decision to deny the reinstallation of the second curb cut is an incorrect decision and should be reversed.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Childers,
Yes.
Mr. Timbrook,
Yes.
Mr. Poltz,
Yes.
Mr. Richardson,
Yes.
Mr. Schneider.
Yes.
Now, I don't really know what that means, but we believe you. We uphold you.
Public's done.
Public's over. So if you want to ask questions, you can ask questions of the city. I'm not sure we're qualified to even answer the questions, to be honest. We're volunteers. What? Nope. Nope. I'm a photographer and he works for the government. I don't know what these guys do. But anyway, no, we have nothing to do with the city. We're just volunteers. We don't even get paid to do this stuff.
Well, Mr. Chairman, can he ask staff a question for clarification or not?
All right, go ahead. Ask your question. We just can't get into a long conversation.
There's no, okay, the apron that says that we're John has used for the driveway, which I said I have no problem. But where is zoning going to say that driveway has to be where it is right now, irregardless of where property lines are, or is it going to be?
Again, that's a
So-
question we can't answer. That's more of a legal question, a city question, a lawyer's question. All we're saying is that they're told,
Since I'm the next door neighbor that's most affected by it, one way or another. And so that's the only question I have. But
Well, Sir, we'd be more than happy to, staff will be happy to address that issue with you and clarify. It's a fair question. We'll be happy to clarify that with you and we can look at the dimensions and answer that specific question. Mr. Chairman, I just want the BZA to be aware though that there are other issues with this property that staff will be looking into, but we understand the
we
decision
have one
based
narrow
on the.
thing. We have one
Exactly.
narrow issue, and that
That's
issue
correct.
was, could they not redo it? And
Correct.
we disagree with that
Right.
decision. Other
Yeah.
than that,
No, we're
everything else
fine
I
with
did.
that. We just wanted to give you some background that there will be other issues that will arise relative to those
yeah, we
driveways.
might get to
decision.
hear about those too, huh?
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
And sir, we can get with you after the meeting or you can give us a call and we can work with. Okay, great. Thank you.
And Naya, you'll be in contact with,
Yes, about the other issues.
okay. So now 7:37, our next case.
you guys don't have to listen to all this if you don't want to.
Yeah, you don't have to listen to this mumbo jumbo again.
Good night,
You're
guys.
welcome. Our next case is BZA case 21-0025. The deal, Woodman, the new Kroger that's going to go on Woodman and several sign variances. So you'd like to tell us what's going on?
Yes. So these are variances from section 1115.09 of the Unified Development Ordinance to allow an increase in the permitted sign area for the ground sides and the electronic message centers that will be on site. It's also a variance request to allow an increase in the height of the ground signs. I have a chart here and was also in your staff report, which included the variance requests and how those dimensions will be from what's permitted and what the request is.
Can you move that little picture up the top corner again?
Yep. So as you may recall from an earlier meeting where they came before you, the former Kmart store is being redeveloped into a new Kmart, or excuse me, new Kroger location. They are removing many of the existing structures there, including the sign or the signs, the light fixtures, the building. They're just doing a full redevelopment. This project also includes new signage that will be on Burkhart and Woodman. So this is the zoning of the subject site. It is outlined in blue. It's in the B2 General Business District. This is an aerial of the subject site. Again, it is outlined in blue. This is the site plan, and this is the location of the proposed signs. Just want to give you an image of the renderings of the signs, and when we're discussing the electronic message centers, what we're discussing is this right here. Again, another image of the sign and the electronic message center. Here is the front of the subject site. I'm sure you're all familiar with this, driven by it many times. Adjacent property across Woodman. The gas station to the north. Location of the Woodman Drive sign. Location of the Burkhart sign. So now we're going to go the standards for approval. The first one, whether the property in question will yield a reasonable return or whether there can be any beneficial use of the property without a variance. The answer to all of them is no. The strict application of the regulations would not allow the applicant to install signs that would convey a message given the speed of the two roads, particularly Woodman, and the size of the site. Whether the variances are substantial, and that is yes to all of the variances that are requested. Whether the essential character of the neighborhood would be altered or whether adjoining properties would suffer a substantial detriment as a result of the variance. The answer to for each of the variances would be no. The fourth standard for approval, whether the variance would adversely affect the delivery of government services. Again, for all of the variance requests, the answer is no. The fifth standard for approval is whether the property owner purchased the property with knowledge of the current zoning regulations, and yes to all of the variance requests. The sixth standard for approval, whether the property owner's predicament can be alleviated through some other method, and that's no. They've designed these signs again to convey their message, to let motorists know in a safe manner the difference between the diesel and the regular fuel prices, given the speeds of the road. And the final standard for approval, whether the spirit and intent behind the zoning requirement would be met. And the answer is yes. There is a section in the sign ordinance for the purpose that states that to protect the public from traffic concerns by reducing driver distractions and addressing driver judgment error risks and risk-taking and traffic violations that can occur from the distractions of certain signs. So by having these designs of the signs, they are meeting this intent behind our sign ordinance. Staff finds that the requested variances are adequately justified and meets the standard for approval. Staff recommends approval of all variances. Here's your required actions, either to approve or deny. Are there any questions for staff?
I do.
Yes.
When you send out the letters for the notice for the meeting tonight, do those go to 300 feet, right? Do those go
Yes.
to just residential or were they sent to the commercial properties surrounding?
They should go to within 300 feet.
Okay, so
All
are we
property owners.
confident that all three gas stations that sit there, they're going to be adversely affected by larger signs, have been notified of the hearing tonight?
They should have been notified, yes.
Has
I
anybody
can
from the
provide
city
you
reached
that
out to them?
list. I'm sorry?
Has anybody from the city reached out to the neighboring gas stations to see if they had an opinion one way or the other about the variances for this?
I have not.
I just go back, and the reason I ask that is when you say that none of the businesses or none of the neighbors are going to be severely impacted, I think I disagree with that. I think you have three gas stations that are going to be severely impacted by that. And I just want to make sure that we don't get in a situation where we just pencil whip variances for Kroger because they're a large company that we want to come in, and I want them to come in too. My fear is that we do something that, and I know the one gas station is owned by a local couple, and I want to make sure that we're not driving business away from them because we give Kroger variances that maybe they don't need or something that severely detracts from those other gas stations. That's my concern. And I would want to make sure that they were aware of this, and I would want to know their opinion before I even put a vote on it.
I don't think we can find it. If they don't feel compelled to be here, then we don't get their opinion.
We can't confirm if they got a letter or not,
I'm
right?
sure they got.
How are you sure? How can you say
I
that?
can-
They're-
Did you,
they're
did
within
you
the
say,
300
did
feet.
you say the cities, the
Right?
companies get them?
Yes, everyone 300
believe
feet. So
what she
we
says.
generate a buffer using the mapping tool provided by the county.
I just find that if I were in her shoes or in Gary's shoes, and I didn't give those letters to those three companies, and all of a sudden something blows up in their backyard, and they were never told.
Sure, no,
I
I
think
believe,
all
I believe
hell
the
would
city
break
if they
loose.
said that, but I don't think any of us can sit here and confirm that a business got a letter or not.
Yeah, I send a letter to myself as well to make sure that when they go
Sure.
out.
And I get letters, so you guys do a good job that I'm not questioning whether you send them or
Yeah.
not. I just don't know. I mean, you have multiple employees, they get mail in and they could toss it and maybe the business owner didn't receive it. And my other concern with this is that we have denied another gas station, 2 ground signs, via the Circle K at Airway and Harshman. And now everything that the city said was wrong with that and why they shouldn't have 2 ground signs is now positive for Kroger. So those are just my concerns. I'm not
So
saying which
Circle
way I vote.
K has been approved for 2 ground signs.
Okay, but when they came to the process, everything was completely opposite of this. So all I'm saying is my opinion is that let's not just pencil whip things for Kroger's. And I take a harder look at it than that. I'm not saying you guys are doing that at all. Please don't take that way. For us, I want us to take extra consideration. And Kroger has came to us a lot for variances and zoning things. And I would hope with all the asks that they're asking, that we could ask them to upkeep that property. That would make me feel more comfortable voting positive for all these variances. That's it. I'm done.
Yeah, just by way of clarification, we didn't have the waiver in place at the current time, and that was a design variance. And now the waiver takes care of the design variance,
Review.
and this is a dimensional variance. So, and now, of course, the waiver has been passed, and that's why Circle K was able to get those 2. So
Sure.
we
makes
are
sense.
consistent under the code. It's just that at that time, we didn't have the tool of the waiver. And the waivers, of course, go to the planning commission rather than come to the BZA.
Unless they don't agree with them, then they come to us. Okay. Anyone else have any questions? Okay, at 7:47, we'll call the public portion into order. Like to speak in favor of it? Okay, just swear in there.
I, Greg Dale, affirm that the testimony I'm about to give before the Board of Zoning Appeals is correct to the best of my knowledge.
And your relationship to the property is what?
I work I'm a owner of McBride Dale Clarion, co-owner. You have seen my partner here, Ann McBride, before. We are representing the Kroger company, the owner. We're the agent for the owner. Okay. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I don't have a lot to add to what Ms. Holt just went through. I think you're familiar with the project. I don't think I need to go through that. She's adequately covered all of the aspects of the variances that are being requested. I can talk more about what those numbers are if the board is interested. You've seen the images of the signs. I would say that just in addition to some of the things that were suggested in terms of the justification, this is a big site. There's a lot going on this site. And I think that Kroger believes that these are the minimum that are needed for the business to be successful. The surrounding businesses do have signs that are of similar size. The reference to the fuel stations, the sizes that are being proposed here are similar to those. So the surrounding signage and the surrounding businesses are a factor in that. But other than that, I would simply concur with what staff has concluded, that the standards in the code are met, and we would respectfully request approval of those variances.
Anyone have any questions?
No.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Are you here to talk about Kroger at all? Okay. There's no one else here, so I can't see it. At 7:49, we'll call
I
the
don't think so.
public portion to an end. Anybody have any questions, issues with city? City seem to be good with it.
No.
I'm good with it. I'm good with it. All right. Let's do this. Okay, I'm gonna call these A, B, and C, and I do them as separate ones, so. On A, which is the sign size, which is the area, we find that Riverside zoning ordinance was passed in law after rigorous procedure was followed. Therefore, we begin our inquiry with the presumption that the law should be upheld without a variance, and the burden is on the appellant to show by convincing evidence that the code should be varied regardless of how large or how small the requested variance may be. We find the property in question would not yield a reasonable return and that there cannot be beneficiaries of the property without the variance. The request is reasonable based on the location of the proposed development. We find that the variance requested is substantial since the request to increase the permitted sign area by 431% on Woodland Drive and the proposed Burkhardt sign, an increased sign area of 77%. We find the essential character of the neighborhood would not be substantially altered by granting the variances requested. The proposed sign will have no effect on the adjoining properties. We find the owner's predicament could not be obviated through some method other than a variance. We find the spirit and intent behind his own ordinance would be observed by granting the variances requested. We take into consideration the city zoning staff recommends granting the variance. We find that the appellate has met the burden of showing that does exist for the variance as requested. Therefore, I make a motion the variance be granted as requested.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Childers?
Yes.
Mr. Timbrook?
Yes.
Mr. Poltz?
Yes.
Mr. Richardson?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
The B portion, the sign height. We found that Riverside zoning ordinance was passed in law after rigorous procedure was followed. Therefore, we begin our inquiry with the presumption that the law should be upheld without a variance and that the burden is on the appellant to show by convincing evidence that the code should be varied regardless of how large or how small the requested variance may be. We find the property in question would not yield a reasonable return, that there cannot be a beneficial use of the property without the variance. The property is over 10 acres and is located on the corner of two heavily traveled roads. The proposed signs will be on the opposite ends of the property. We find the variance for the sign height is substantial since the request is a 100% increase. The applicant is requesting to install a sign on Woodland Drive that is 9 feet taller than the 9 feet permitted. The sign on Burkhardt is 1 foot taller than the 7 foot permitted, which is not substantial. We find the essential character of the neighborhood would not be substantially altered, nor would the adjoining properties be affected. We find the properties, the owner's predicament could not be obviated by displaying a conforming sign. The current design of the proposed signs is the minimum height sign area necessary to identify the site and convey the new information to motorists in a safe manner. We find the spirit and intent of the zoning ordinance would be observed by granting the variance. We also take into consideration the city zoning staff recommends granting the variance. We find that the appellant has met the burden of showing that practical difficulties exist for the variance as requested. Therefore, I make a motion that the variance be approved as requested.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Childers?
Yes.
Mr. Richardson?
Yes.
Mr. Poltz?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Timbrook?
Yes.
Okay, then part C of 21-0025, dealing with the sign area of the electronic messaging sign. We found that the Riverside zoning ordinance was passed in law after regular procedure was followed. Therefore, we begin our inquiry with the presumption that the law should be upheld without a variance and that the burden is on the appellant to show by convincing evidence that the code should be varied regardless of how large or how small the requested variance may be. We found that the property in question would not yield a reasonable return and that there cannot be a beneficial use of the property without the variance. The request is reasonable based on the location of the proposed development. We found the variance requested is substantial since the request is to increase the permitted sign area by 39%. We find the essential character of the neighborhood would not be substantially altered by granting the variance as requested. The proposed sign will have no effect on adjoining properties. We find the owner's predicament could not be obviated through some method other than the variance. We found that the spirit and intent behind the zoning ordinance would be observed by granting the variance as requested. We take into consideration that the city zoning staff recommends granting the variance. We find that the appellant has met the burden of showing that practical difficulties exist with variance as requested. Therefore, I make a motion the variance be granted as requested.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Childers?
Yes.
Mr. Timbrook?
Yes.
Mr. Poltz?
Yes.
Mr. Richardson?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
What is the projected date that that will open? Just curious. All right.
I prepared for the sign variance for this. meeting. Then I got to that. I honestly don't know.
Okay,
But thank you very much for your.
thank you.
Okay.
When?
They said 1 November of 22.
The last time they were in the.
What?
I got a bulldoze with that.
I had one of my first jobs there, at Kmart. I graduated from college.
They came up.
Huh?
They came up.
They had Kmart's that far back. Can you believe that? Yeah. With a different look to it. A different smell. I learned a lot of stuff in there. I was a manager. Moved on.
All
Oh,
right.
make a motion that we adjourn.
Wait, 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 wait.
Yeah.
Wait, wait.
some zoning masters.
Yes. There was an email sent about a possible work session.
Yes.
I didn't know if that worked for you, or do we need to consider another date?
Well, the thing is, I think everybody should be there. We already know that this fellow right here says he can't be there.
I'm gone that whole week, so.
Okay.
That's Thanksgiving week.
So I think we need it. It is?
Yeah.
It is.
Mhm.
Oh, well, that's just another week for me.
But that's what I was gonna let you know afterwards. I want to hear that. With you.
Okay.
There's two. All right, so we got five
I'll
other
be here
days.
though.
Man,
I
that's my
think
count.
all five of us would be there. Here's fine.
So Tim will handle my proxy.
Okay. So we probably need to push
Tim will
it
handle my
to
proxy.
2022.
What?
Yes,
All right. Then we will let Mr. Miller know.
very interested in.
But I do think we need to do it. I think it's absolutely necessary we do
I
it.
agree.
I think we should all be there.
Yeah.
So we can be consistent.
All right.
Now, make a motion that we adjourn. All those in favor?